So you just sold your investment property. Now what? There are 4 common passive strategies that 1031 exchange investors should keep in mind, but each one leads to a very different experience. So what's the best move here? Let's compare your top 1031 exchange options and help you make the right call. Hey, I'm Paolo Aguilar, co-founder of Wealthstone Group, and I've personally guided hundreds of 1031 exchanges for investors across the country, and I've spent over 15 years inside some of the top real estate and alternative investment firms, learning how these strategies are built from the inside out. And today, I'm breaking down the 4 most common passive 1031 exchange options for investors: DSTs, 721 UPREITs, TICs, and net lease properties. So let's dive in. First up, DSTs, or Delaware Statutory Trusts. DSTs are one of the most popular 1031 exchange options for investors who want a completely passive experience. You invest in fractional ownership of large institutional grade real estate like multifamily, industrial, or medical office buildings. The sponsor handles everything from tenants, repairs, leasing, and management. And so all you do as an investor is collect income with no landlord responsibilities. And DSTs are going to be designed to be long-term holds, also typically ranging from 5 to 10 years, depending on the offering. And once the sponsor sells the property, you can choose to do another 1031, whether it's back into another DST or go back into actual physical real estate, or, of course, take the proceeds and pay the tax. During the hold period, you're expected to receive a monthly cash flow ranging from anywhere from 4 to 6%, depending again on the property type and the structure. And so the trade-off is DSTs are illiquid and you give up control. As I mentioned, the sponsor decides when to sell the property and you can't refinance or force an exit. So it's truly a hands-off investment, but it also means letting go of any decision making. Next up, 721 UPREIT. There are actually 2 ways to complete a 721 exchange. The first is a direct contribution into a REIT that acquires your property directly, and in return, you receive what are called operating partnership units, OP units for short. But here's the thing. Your property has to meet the REIT's acquisition requirements, and that often rules out a lot of smaller or non-core properties for REITs. And so, a more common path, especially for high net worth individuals, is a 2-step approach using a DST. And so here's how it works. Step 1, you complete a 1031 exchange into a DST that's designed for a future UPREIT transaction. And then step 2, after typically a 2-year hold period, that DST is acquired then by the REIT. And so your interest is now then converted into operating partnership units, which actually eventually become REIT shares. But your capital isn't going to be immediately liquid. So most REITs require that you hold these shares for another 12 months or so before you're allowed to start liquidating. So altogether, it's about a 3-year timeline before you can fully access your capital. So why would an investor choose this option? That's because at this point, you're in a diversified REIT portfolio and have access to your capital, and you're no longer going to manage your real estate on a day-to-day basis. But it is important to understand that once you convert to REIT shares, your 1031 exchange deferral ends. And so any future liquidation will trigger capital gains. And so this strategy is a fit for investors who want really estate simplicity, passive income, and a long-term path to liquidity, and are also comfortable paying taxes later down the road, but not necessarily today. Now let's talk about TICs, or tenant-in-common arrangements. Now, TICs let you co-own a property with up to 35 other investors. You'll eventually hold direct title and have voting rights on decisions like leasing, refinancing, or selling the property. That gives you more control than, let's say, a DST or a 721 UPREIT, but it also means more complexity. And what I mean by that is that you'll need to coordinate with other owners, which can slow things down or even lead to disputes. And here's why financing is also going to matter in this entire arrangement. Let's say if there's a loan involved, lenders will typically underwrite each TIC owner individually. So your deal is going to depend not just on your finances, but on everyone else's as well. So one weak credit profile in the mix of TIC owners can delay or derail the entire transaction. And that's why TICs are best suited for typically all cash investors or for deals with aligned, financially qualified co-owners. So if you want some control without full management responsibilities and you're confident in the group dynamics, a TIC could be a good fit. Last but not least, triple net lease properties or net lease properties. So these are typically single tenant commercial buildings leased to national brands like Walgreens, FedEx, or Dollar General. In a triple net lease, the tenant is going to be responsible for property taxes, insurance, and maintenance costs, which means you as an investor are going to receive net rental income with relatively low day-to-day involvement, and you still own the property directly and maintain full control and ownership. And that includes deciding when to sell or refinance, renegotiate lease terms, and also handling any capital improvements that arise. So net lease properties are structured similarly to a corporate bond. So you receive a consistent contractual income over a set lease term. It's often going to be backed by a credit tenant. Because these leases are long and typically have fixed or slow growing rents, net lease properties tend to offer less appreciation than value add or growth oriented real estate. But for many investors, the goal isn't going to be growth, income stability, simplicity, and ownership control. What's the main risk? If the tenant leaves or defaults, and you may face temporary vacancy and need to cover costs to release or repurpose the space, which can take time and additional capital out of your pocket. Now, still, for the right investor, net lease properties offer a very compelling mix of predictable income, direct ownership, and decision-making control without any of the intensity of active property management. So how these four options stack up? Let's summarize. If your priority is passive income with full tax deferral and long-term estate simplicity, but may want to go back into active real estate, DSTs are a strong fit. If you want eventual liquidity exposure to a diversified large portfolio of real estate, and also want estate simplicity, you may want to look into a 721 UPREIT. Next up, if you